episode of My Soul Connection. I'm your host, Billy K. Kavert. Today I'm trying something a little bit new. It is another solo episode, but it's a little bit more freeform. I just wanted to kind of sit back and relax and share some thoughts that I've had about things that I know are affecting people all over the country and probably the world, but certainly in my circles, I've talked to a lot of people about this. Do you ever have that feeling that you just want to quit your job, sell all of your belongings, go build a little tiny home on a piece of property, or maybe even buy a van and become a vagabond and just release yourself from all the noise and clutter and chaos of day-to-day life? I find myself feeling like that way too often, and it's gotten to a point where I know I need to check myself a bit. And since coming into this new year, one thing that became very clear to me is people have a lot of good intentions around setting New Year's goals, and there's nothing wrong with that. I did my goals for the new year as well. But considering people feel so scattered and overwhelmed and disconnected, instead of adding more to our plates, like more goals and more productivity requirements, what if this next chapter of our lives wasn't about adding more and doing more, but about removing what no longer fits in our lives and who we want to become? Sort of a decluttering process. And I started thinking about the way I live my life at home. I'm a pretty simple person. If you were to come in my house, you'd see that it's a little on the plain side. It could definitely use a little more decor. It borders on minimalism, not because I'm trying to be a minimalist, but I just don't like clutter. I like things to be very clean and neat and organized. Otherwise, it just kind of gets in the way of my mental space. And I at one time read Marie Kondo's book. She's the professional organizer from Japan who ended up writing a book and having a Netflix series. I took her method and applied it to my home in a lot of areas of my home, cleaning out my closets and all the clutter around my house and really trying to minimize as much as possible, but in effort to stay more organized and only have the things on hand that you really need or that are really meaningful. So I've gone through that process multiple times, and it always feels good when I unload stuff that I don't need anymore. But what if we applied that Marie Kondo philosophy to our mental space, to instead of just doing physical, what about the mental clutter and distractions that we all face every day? And what about time itself? Everybody is always talking about how they're short on time, they're ultra busy, there's not enough time in the day. But is that because there's truly not enough time in the day, or because that constant like to-do list and things that are coming at us in this technology age from every angle, whether it's social media, work emails, text messages, phone calls, like we are just hammered nonstop 24/7 with to-dos, with other people's priorities, but also with an overconsumption mentality. So one of the things Marie Kondo encourages you to do in her book, if you're going through your closets and you're trying to declutter your closets, for example, is you physically touch each and every item and you pick it up and you ask yourself, does this spark joy? I know it kind of sounds like a silly question, but I actually did this. I picked up every single piece of clothing and I asked myself, does this spark joy? And actually, I went even further. I put every single piece of clothing on and I just looked in the mirror and it's like, does this feel good on me or does it not? If I have that kind of like that frumpy feeling, then it went bye-bye. If I had a feeling of, oh, I look really good in this color or this fits me right, then I kept it. And I found that you can kind of apply this to a lot of different things in your life that are taking up mental space. So the idea is to apply it not only to objects, but to inputs and to commitments as well. Is this information I'm taking in or this commitment that I have to do something, whether it's a social activity or a work priority or whatever, is it something that's going to bring value to my life? So what I've discovered is that decluttering is really energetic. So for me, it's about freedom of opening up space to bring clarity in, clarity about what's most important in my life and how to allow the right things in my life to blossom. So everything that you allow into your life is either feeding it or it's fragmenting it, the way that I look at it. So put in another way, is it in line with your goals and your values, or is it distracting you from your goals and your values? So let's walk through the decluttering process, Marie Kondo style, of your physical space, and then apply it to mental as well. So Marie Kondo has a 3-step process for decluttering. First, she says, touch everything because you want to become really aware of it so you can evaluate it from your heart. And then ask the question, does this reflect who I am now? Does it spark joy? And does it support how I want to feel in my home? And then if it doesn't, you release it with gratitude and give it to somebody who really wants to welcome it into their space. So if this is something that you want to do for your physical environment, just take one little spot in your home this week and work on it. And when I say one little spot, I'm talking about like your junk drawer, or maybe I just do the top 2 drawers in my desk. this week, and then next week I work on the other two. And you just slowly start to do it because then you can do it intentionally. You can really think about what you're getting rid of and what you're keeping. And then by the time you get through the whole desk, which might take 2 weeks, you can reorganize it and put everything away in a way that makes a lot more sense and brings you a lot of calmness when you're looking for things that you need in that desk, right? So, with the physical space in mind, just knowing what you have to do to go through the process of cleaning up your physical space, let's talk about the mental clutter, which is really information you consume. It's obviously not a bad thing to want to grow and learn and expand, but as I mentioned earlier, there's a tipping point. There's a point at which you can read all the books in the world, but if you don't take the time to retain it and integrate it, it's really not going to be helpful for you anyway. One thing that's really worked for me lately is that I don't take my phone with me on walks every time anymore. I intentionally go out with no phone. I don't want to be contacted. I don't want to listen to anything. I just want to be with my dog, with my breath, and with nature. And that seems to work really well when I just need to clear some mental space and not take anything more in. There's also a lot of digital habits that we all have, of course. A lot of people are really addicted to social media. A lot of people I know are also addicted to news. Some people get into really big group chats and kind of get addicted to that. And some people just do a lot of doom scrolling. I mean, think about it. Have you ever looked around in the line at a grocery store and seen how many people are sitting on their phones, just totally checked out of the world around them? Or even better, the gate of an airport? Everybody is on their phone looking down at the gate of an airport. Now, granted, I am totally guilty of that too. When I'm bored and I have nothing else to do, I go into like, let me clean out my inbox mode or let me see what's going on social media. Those are the times when I literally can't be anywhere else and I'm just standing around waiting that I will do a little scrolling or checking things out on my phone. But what I've noticed is it really blocks me off from the rest of the world. When you're looking down at your phone, you're not seeing the rest of the environment around you. And I've had some really, really interesting conversations with people in the airport or on a bus or in the grocery store line. And it's kind of cool once in a while just to allow yourself to be a little bored. So you have to wait for 5 minutes just to check out your surroundings and not only pay attention to what's going on and being available to not miss some kind of an interesting conversation or something, but also just to have some downtime. As soon as you go into your phone, you just get caught in this other world and you keep that brain moving and still consuming more information than it should. Another thing that we need to often declutter is our thought patterns. Have you ever been stuck in a loop on one specific thought over and over again and you find yourself just ruminating in it? And maybe it goes away for a while because you distract yourself with work, but then it comes back. This is why I'm such a big proponent of meditation and mindfulness. That helps you to really become aware of where the thoughts are looping. And then when you're in a situation where you find that's happening, just the awareness alone that, oh, here I am, I'm looping again, will allow you to stop and go on to something else. There's also a lot of emotional obligations. A lot of us have friends, family, coworkers who need support, and there's certainly nothing wrong with giving them support. But if it's at the expense of your own mental health and well-being, it's time to start drawing boundaries, right? And lastly, constant stimulation. Everyone needs time to recharge. And do you give yourself ample time to recharge? So when you do have that little bit of downtime, are you one of those people I just mentioned who just sits on your phone? Because that's really not giving your brain any quiet time. I have found personally that just sitting there and closing my eyes, I'm not trying to meditate. I'm not trying to take a nap. I'm literally at times just trying to rest my eyes because blocking out the visual stimulation around you allows your brain to recharge and relax. And of course, if you can do that in a quiet place, you're also eliminating the auditory stimulation as well. So another thing I really like to do when I'm trying to give myself some rest is just do a journaling exercise, like 10 minutes of just free writing. Stream of consciousness, whatever comes to mind, just get it out on paper because then you're getting stuff out. You're not taking more in. So that helps me anyway with some of the overstimulation. So with that, you can ask yourself 4 filtering questions. One is, does this nourish me, this activity, or does it numb me? Does it offer clarity or is it more mental clutter? Does it support who I'm becoming? And does it strengthen or scatter my energy? If you were to ask those 4 filtering questions of yourself every time, and I'm not saying that with every activity you do, especially during the workday, that you should be asking that question. I'm just talking about when you're feeling overwhelmed and you're starting to check yourself. If you saw everything through that lens and asked yourself those questions, I bet there'd be a lot that you could cross off your list. So what would happen if you think about those filtering questions? What would happen if you became more selective about what gets access to your nervous system? When you think about it that way, it actually means a lot more. Like, what's actually physically affecting my nervous system and what am I going to allow to do that or not? Okay, so we've talked about physical environment, we've talked about mental decluttering. Now let's talk about the decluttering of time and commitments. Our schedules reveal our values. And I know that people will say, mine doesn't. And I was in that boat for a long time as well. I felt like my schedule was being overtaken with things that I didn't value. And that's when I knew things were really out of alignment for me. So if you look at your schedule and you say, but those aren't my values, then you know it's time to stop living on autopilot and really take a look at where your time is being spent. Do a time audit. Where does your time actually go? Not where you think it goes. Where does it actually go? This is kind of like when you're trying to redo your budget and you're putting your numbers together and you want to save a certain amount of money or you have some specific financial goals, but you need to get your spending in check, right? How can you create a budget for yourself if you have no idea what you're really spending on groceries and on your household needs and on clothing and everything else and all the little miscellaneous items like coffees out and things that we buy on a whim that we don't need? In order to get a handle of your finances, you have to know where you're spending your money. The same is true for our time. In order to get a handle on your time, you've got to know how your time is being spent, and it shouldn't be guessing. So do a time audit. Where does your time actually go? You can audit your work. I've done this before, by the way. I took a whole week one time to write down everything I was doing and I would put it into different categories and figure out where I was spending the bulk of my time. And I found out that I was spending way too much time in certain areas that weren't actually bringing value to my business. And then I shifted things. I started becoming a lot more discerning about what I was willing to take on or not, or what kinds of things I could delegate, what I was doing that was just kind of unnecessary and it was just busy work. And I cut a lot of stuff off my list. And that created a whole new world for me at work where I freed all this time that I never thought I had before. But really, I just had to go find it and make sure that I was spending time on activities that were really bringing value to my work. You can do the same thing with your relationships, how you're spending your time. One thing I've noticed in my relationship is my husband and I have talked about there's a difference between spending time with your spouse or your family, your kids, or whatever, versus spending quality time. So audit the amount of time that you're spending with them, but also what are you doing during that time? I know a lot of families who say, oh, yeah, we spend an hour together every evening, but they're all on their phones. So that's not really spending time together, right? It's not quality time anyway. Are you spending time scrolling on social media? You know, we have tools on our phone to tell us exactly how much time we're spending on that kind of stuff. So that's an easy one that we should be able to figure out. How much time are you giving yourself to rest? I'm guilty of this. I don't rest a whole lot, but I'm trying to build that into my schedule a little bit more, making sure I give myself time to rest. Also, how much time do you spend on things that bring you joy and fun and adventure? And then how much time are you spending on things that just require maintenance? Like, we all have homes that need maintenance and we have things to do and errands to run, but might be a good way to look at if you can do something more efficiently. And then how much time are you spending on obligations? We have obligations, as mentioned, from social circles, from family, from friends, and certainly from work. But within each of those categories, it's good to figure out what's a really important obligation and what's one that you can either eliminate, change, make more efficient. So just take a look at all that. So when you're doing this time audit and you've completed it on whatever category that you feel is most important first, ask yourself some questions. Does this feel aligned? The things that I'm doing on a daily basis, does it feel aligned or does it feel obligatory? And is it even conscious? Is it in my conscious awareness? I found a lot of things I was doing unconsciously just because I've always done it. And I realized things have changed and I don't need to do those things anymore. So I can eliminate those things off my list. And another question I think is worth asking yourself is at the end of every day, if you took 5 minutes to journal, ask yourself, would I choose to spend my time this way tomorrow? Another thing to ask yourself is if my energy were currency, would this be worth it? So what I mean by that is if you are going out to buy something and it costs you $100, you make a decision in that moment to either spend $100 or not based on the value. Is it worth the $100 to me? Well, what if you looked at your energy that way? Is this energy I'm putting into something really worth it? Does it have payback? Does it add value to my life? Okay, so we've talked about the three big things: physical decluttering, mental decluttering, and decluttering of our time and obligations. So now it's time to talk integration. Decluttering is liberation. It is such a liberating feeling. I know everyone who's listening to this has decluttered something in their life at some point and felt so good afterwards. So Just think about the liberation that it's brought you and think about, have you ever truly spent the time to declutter your mind and your time just as much as you have your closet? And I know this sounds funny, but it really takes courage to let your life get simpler. And I say courage because I think many of us have a false sense that being busy and productive equates to a sense of worthiness. But worthiness is not measured in productivity. This is something I have to remind myself of every single day. We are innately worthy. We are worthy of love. We are worthy of happiness. We are worthy of a good life, of doing things that feels good and not bad. So, in the context of the culture in which we live, where productivity is highly encouraged and, Americans are obsessed with it, just have the courage to let yourself live a simpler life. So, once you've gone through this stripping process and you've done all this mental and physical decluttering, what are you noticing that wants to come in? That is the most interesting part of this, that the more decluttering I've done, the more space has been opened up for me to do the things that really pique my interest. I have more creativity that comes through. I get new, fresh ideas. I get sparks of inspiration. So it's really a matter of how do you want your days to feel? And you're not going to know that until you do some decluttering and allow some space. So this is a really good time to reassess your values. And I will tell you, one really good thought partner I've had in terms of reassessing my values is ChatGPT. I know it sounds crazy, but here's what I did one day. I typed up, like in a Word document, all the things that matter to me in life: my family, my freedom, my health, my career, my stability, all these things. And I threw it into Chat GPT and I said, where do you find commonalities and where are there consistencies and overlap? Because I wanted to come up with my 4 key values, the 4 pillars in life that I turn to for every decision I make and I look at when I'm evaluating whether something is worth my time or not. My personal core 4 values are being connected. I really like being connected to people, to myself. Obviously, this podcast is called My Soul Connection. It's because I like connecting with people and the world around me. As you've heard me talk about before, I'm also very concerned about my health. Health is a key pillar for me as well. So I bounce a lot off of how does this affect my health? And if I'm feeling particularly overwhelmed or stressed out, then it's clearly a time for me to reassess. Because I can make all the time in the world for the gym or for eating right, but if I'm stressed out all the time because I'm too mentally cluttered and exhausted and worried too much about productivity, then my health is at risk. Another thing for me is expansion. I love to grow, learn, evolve, and expand. And that comes in many different forms. It's my own personal learning. It's expanding into being exposed to new people, new ideas. It's learning a new language. It's expanding in my creativity. It's expanding my business. Expansion is really important to me because if you're not growing, you're dying. And then my 4th one is freedom. I want freedom. I want freedom to work my schedule the way that I want to. I want freedom to travel. I want financial freedom. So those are my 4 core pillars. And everything important in my life relates to it in some way. So you may think, well, why didn't she mention family? And we know she's married and she has kids. Is that not important to her? Of course it's important to me, but that's where the connection comes in. Staying connected to my family is very, very important to me. So take the time to reassess your values and see after you've done this stripping process how things line up with those values. And I think it'll really help you to push reset for the new year and to maybe even relook at your goals and see if your goals still feel aligned or whether maybe one of your goals is about stripping some unnecessary work that you do, some unnecessary ways that you spend your time, or just cleaning up your physical space, decluttering your mind, whatever it is. It's just a great way to go back and reevaluate your life to see how aligned you are. So in closing, we are not victims to our circumstances. We actually have the power to change and edit our lives. And the more awareness that you have about what you're currently doing and how it's working or not working compared to your values and the way that you want your life to feel, then the more aligned you'll become as you work through those things. You're not here to carry everything forward in life. You're here to choose what comes with you. So with that, I hope this was helpful. It was something that's been on my mind a lot lately and something I'm personally working through myself. And I hope that you find some value in it and can share it with others. So thanks so much for listening. And just remember to keep connecting to your soul. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of My Soul Connection. If you found the information useful, be sure to rate and review the episode and share it with others as well. And make sure you subscribe to the My Soul Connection podcast so you'll never miss an update. Until next time, keep connecting with your soul.